All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another discussion of Monster. We are on the second bind up today, and I am joined by my wonderful friend, Merphy Napier. Hello, Merphy. How are you?
Philip, I'm good. How are you?
It is great to see you. And Patrick Leo, our other friend who is with us on this read along, is not with us today because he has other obligations, but he will be back in a couple bind ups, I think. So
I
it will
think we
be
have three without him, and then he'll be back.
okay. Okay, great. So that'll be awesome. In the meantime, though, you and I get to cover the second bind up. So let us begin with your general impressions. How did you experience this bind up, Merphy?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This one was intense.
Yeah.
I felt like in the last one, I was like, oh, this is a lot to cover in just one video. And I feel even more that way in this video. And I also feel like I have had very few questions answered, but way more asked. So I'm still
Yeah.
just like, what are we doing? But I am constantly impressed with the structure of the story. I love having new reveals come or new characters introduced and being able to say, oh, that aligns with that, or that's building on that. And I really like, you and I really like finding connections and kind of digging into it. And this is definitely a series that allows for a lot of that. So lots of opportunities to kind of harken back to things that have already been mentioned, ended in a really sweet place, but also heavy, 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 heavy.
Yeah, I mentioned in our previous discussion how there was a Turkish woman who accosted Tenma and said, "Why didn't you treat my husband?" And we just, as an almost aside, we talked briefly about how, yes, there was a period when there were a lot of Turkish immigrants who came to Germany, and then there was some persecution, particularly from very right-wing racist elements within Germany of this ethnic group, and it was almost like, and I think I said even it's kind of subtle, right? Not so subtle in here,
No,
right?
it's right there in the forefront.
Yeah, it's central here. It's
Yeah,
really central to what happens here with you have neo-Nazis plotting to burn down a Turkish neighborhood, and that's a big part of what's going on, and that's mixed up with the whole Johann character who's somehow being taken as some mystical, a great new leader by these neo-Nazis, and we're not sure that that's really what Johann is all about. In fact, we're pretty sure it's not what he's about. But that was one element of here that I found it's not the fun thing to read about, really, is it? Although I think it's important to portray in literature because
oh sure,
it's
yeah.
part of humanity. Unfortunately, we
Hmm.
have a long history of dominant groups persecuting minority groups, othering them, finding ways to
Absolutely.
blame them for all kinds of social ills, and on and on and on. So it's and I thought it was, eh, integrated into the story in a way that was heavy, as you
Hmm.
said, but at the same time, it became part of the story as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then we also have more heavy themes with children, I
Yeah,
mean, we adopted our daughter. I care about adoption very much. And so seeing the
yeah,
treatment of these children in orphanages and then him with his foster father and really just being displaced and desperately searching for a father, which also parallels really well with Johann, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But Johann also, there's been a pattern of naming and searching for father figures and then
yeah.
killing them. So yeah, lots of interesting things going on here, but definitely a lot of heavy subject matters. And again, as you said, it's all stuff that should be discussed because even modern day, there are many orphanages and foster situations that are abusive and that people need to intervene. Like this is stuff that needs to be addressed. So it's
Yeah.
important real world issues. I just need breathers. Like there were chapters where I was like, let me go take a walk. Like I got to take a break before I can keep reading. It's a very heavy.
Yeah, especially the Dieter parts.
The Dieter stuff was rough.
It was rough. It was very hard, and I knew from pretty early on that Hartman was a creep. That's
Yeah.
the the guy who was abusing Dieter and
Yeah.
was part of this whole experiment thing that was going on when it was Eastern Germany under the communist regime, and it was I mean, we had been speculating that there was some supernatural element, and that I haven't entirely ruled out, because Johann was different even before they got hold of him, and at this orphanage where apparently everyone killed each other. And Johann seemed to have played some role in manipulating that event to happen. So there was something about this kid even before they got their hands on him to make him part of this experiment. So I haven't ruled out supernatural. Have you?
Same. No, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not convinced of it, but I'm also not unconvinced of it. I think at this point, we're not really supposed to know what we're doing. I think we're meant to be very confused at this point in the story, and that's definitely how I feel. But with Johann, it could go a lot of different directions because, as you said, from the moment, like for as far back as we know of his history, he has been a violent, twisted individual, right?
Yeah.
So you have that kind of, at first I thought, oh, they've been experimenting on him. And then we got the orphanage reveal, and it was like, oh, okay, they definitely were experimenting on him. They definitely have been doing this psychological experimentation with these children to try to manipulate, what kind of people that they would turn out to be, using them as tools. But then it's made very clear that he was already, like, he didn't need much assistance. He was gifted in the art of manipulating people into destroying themselves, and has kind of always had this goal of being the last man standing, which is why he's not going to be a very good Hitler 2.0. Oh, what is YouTube going to allow us to say directly about?
I
We
think
might
we're
get flagged on this
okay.
video. Okay, all right.
That's interesting. That's an interesting question, but I think we're okay.
There's certain like violence and war discussions that YouTube will flag, but it'll be all right. Anyway, yeah, I
Find
don't
out.
think we'll find out. We'll find out. I think that I don't think he's going to make a good new lead head, because yeah, he's really not racist. He just hates everyone.
Yeah, the Tenma says it, right? He says he's not your racist leader. He hates the human race.
Yeah, exactly. He wants everyone gone. He wants to be the last one standing. So it's the baby is going to he's going to find that he's barking up the wrong tree, but we'll see that play out.
I thought it was really interesting how effective Kurosawa was in making this entire bind-up in some way about Johann, who doesn't even appear in the bind-up.
And just his image, that's it.
His image and his actions, his writing on the wall, literally, and and of course the body that he leaves behind, all of that, but he doesn't actually appear, and it's really escalating the creep factor here for me with this character. Like, what is this guy?
Right.
Those messages scrawled on the wall, and there's this, like, are these pleas for help? What exactly is this? So yeah, there's a lot of mystery involved in this character who's just kind of seems larger than life and creepy and possibly demonic. I don't know.
Right, possibly. Yeah, I haven't ruled it out either. This takes a very much a Lovecraftian sort of principle for the horror element so far, where it's like the fear of the thing is more scary than the thing itself. Like Johann isn't some domineering character, he's a domineering presence so far, which I do subscribe to the principle that the buildup is the best part. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how that goes. I do have a couple of nitpicks about the characterization of the antagonist so far, but I'm sure we'll get into that. I'm sure there's a lot of plot points and themes, things that we want to dig into as well.
Well, we could talk about that point if you want first.
Sure. All right. Yeah, let's go straight to me being negative. So I think that this series is amazing so far at characterization. We talked about that last chunk where characters will be introduced. We saw this with several characters in the last one, but also in this one with the grumpy old doctor who has a heart of gold, and with the ex-assassin that has given up on the life. Like all these things where these characters just have these vignettes, and you care about them as much as you care about the main characters. So characterization killer. So far, I'm not sold on the characterization of the antagonistic forces. Because I feel like every single one we've encountered so far has been very caricaturized. So like the baby's a great example of this, where he's just like this raving, wanting to build up, this regime again. Then you also have the foster dad, who is abusive, and then he's like pointing the gun at the kid, and he's dropping the gun and going hysterical, and everything is just very hysterical. Even the guy in the beginning of this with the gun, who is like, he destroyed a flower bed, so like this is horrible, right? Like everything was just very over the top. So it's interesting because there's a lot of discussion about a good villain. Like Hitler wasn't naturally charismatic. He had to build that up, and he wasn't successful because he was a domineering force exclusively. He was successful because he was charismatic, because he could come in through the back door, because he could schmooze. And Johann is successful with manipulating all these people because he has that characterization or characteristic. So it's like we have a lot of discussions over what makes a really good villain, but the villains we're seeing on page are not that. They're just very over the top. And I like a good over the top villain, but every villain shouldn't be that way, because true villains should have layers and nuance and charisma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. Even like Ava, the diva Ava.
I love Ava.
She's very also over the top character.
She is.
The one exception I think in this bind up was General Wolf, who we don't really see a lot of. I expected another racist kind of crazy guy, and he has. First of all, he was introduced as having aged a lot.
Yes,
and it's because he's terrified of Johann.
Yes,
and so he's kind of shifted. There's movement in this character where now he's trying to get Tenma to help him get rid of this problem. Now he's not likable. He's not reformed exactly, but he is scared to death. So there's a little I think some interesting movement, at least with that one villain so far.
I agree. And I'm not critical. I feel that way so far, but I'm not writing off antagonistic forces in the series, because everything I've heard about the series is, oh my goodness, the villain is one of the best villains ever. So I expect we're going to get somewhere. That's just my impression so far.
Yeah, that's probably Johann, I guess, but
Right.
You know who did get a little bit of nuance in this one? I thought it was interesting. Is Lunga, the BKA inspector guy who's obsessed with Tenma, and Mr. Typewriter Hand.
You're right. Yeah, that was weird. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. I thought, okay, I didn't even realize he was married. And that he had a daughter. Interesting relationships with daughters in here so far too. But I kind of ended up liking him a little more after reading this bind up.
He was more interesting.
Yeah, he was more interesting as a character. Yeah, he's not a bad person per se. Very much neglecting his family. He's very obsessed, very focused. But he's not after Tenma because he's a mean cop or something. He's after Tenma because he really believes that Tenma is most likely, logically speaking, and he has a point, it probably is Tenma who's committed these murders, because he's just too linked to it all. It's too, I don't know if Johann set this up this way on purpose or what, but for whatever, however it came out, Tenma seems very much linked. So Lunga is right in a way, and his obsession with Tenma isn't about his ego. It isn't about, I don't think anyway, it's more about justice, or not even justice, because he says, I'm not interested in justice. I just want to find the people, how this happened. And so he's became a little more interesting to me. I don't know how you experienced him this time.
No, I agree. He feels less like a caricature of there's that word again, of just like the detective, you know, with like the
Right.
quirky thing, and more of a fleshed out character. I guess he must have been lying in the previous volume, because in the previous volume he told Tenma, I've never failed a case. I've never lost someone. I've never been wrong before.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, he's this hotshot detective that like is the best in his field. And then in this one, we see him losing cases, we see him losing his family, we see him not being observant, we see him having this crackpot theory about Tenma that's kind of baseless.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, are you a terrible detective and you just lie and say that you're an excellent detective, you know? Or and then I also wonder, I'm curious what you think about this, Philip. Do you think he's right? Do you think that he's onto something, that Tenma did
No,
it?
no, I don't. I think he believes with 100% conviction that he's right, that he
Yes.
can't see an alternative that makes sense at this point. He hasn't met Johann, right?
Right.
So I don't I is it one of those things where Johann is a figment of Tenma's imagination kind of
So
thing?
that's what I'm wondering. I don't necessarily think that's what's happening, but at the end of this bind up, we got the reveal that at least Tenma thinks Johann has multiple or has DID, dissociative identity disorder, right?
Right.
So he has multiple personalities. So that's what he's thinking. I don't know if we're actually doing that or if it's a misconception, if it's a mislead, you know, it could be a million different things. But it could be because the only encounters we've seen of him with the boy was when he was a boy and when he's an adult and he's in a dark room and he only gets a flash of him and moves on. Now, we also have Nina who's interacting with him as an adult, but even her interaction with him where he says, I don't want to be a part of this. This isn't what I want. My darkness is far deeper. That was off paged.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this is my theory. I'm just saying it's not off the table for me that the big twist could be that Tenma has DID and
Mm,
Johann is like when something happened in the hospital, Tenma split and
mm.
created like this personification of an adult Johann. You know what I mean?
I do. There's one scene that it doesn't ruin the theory entirely, but it's the scene where Johann shoots the thief who wanted the clock in the head, and Tenma was there and said,
Uh-huh.
"No, don't do it," you know, and then of course he ended up shooting him. I forget that thief's
Uh-huh.
name, but you remember the one, right? We're
I
in
do.
that
Yeah, I do.
warehouse.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we do there is that encounter between Tenma and Johann
But it
there.
was from Tenma's perspective, and there
Yes.
wasn't a crowd of survivors that could come away saying there were two men.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
So
I don't know. I'm not saying I'm in 100%. I won't die on this hill, but
right.
it's not off the table for me.
It's interesting. Yeah, I know. It did occur to me that that could be happening as well. There was an interesting line that Nina or Anna or whatever you want to call her, and that's not even her real name, and Johann's real name is not Johann either, but whatever. But she says there are two Johanns at the
Right.
end,
Right.
like something to
So
do with her shooting him in the head.
I know. Okay, let's talk about that then.
Okay.
What do you have what do you think? How do you interpret that?
I mean, I also thought maybe that fits with what you were saying, where Johann has multiple personalities, and that maybe in shooting him in the head on that one occasion, she killed one of them. Or I'm not sure what to make of it at this point, really.
The only thing I can think of that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense, period. If the situation is that Johann has DID and she killed one, but the other one it needs two bullets, then we're talking about something supernatural, because that's not how
Right.
mental health works. You don't shoot someone with mental
No.
health in the head and they rebirth. Like that's not. So it
Right.
would have to be something new, supernatural, where he has two lives. Or I don't know what else. Like, what else could she mean? So the only
Yeah.
other thing I can think of is if she did kill Johann in that moment, and it could be a supernatural thing, it could be a mental health thing, where then Johann is kind of like rebirthed inside of Tenma, and now she needs to kill
Mhm.
Johann again by killing Tenma. Again, this is not my hill. I'm just spiraling.
Yeah.
But
And
I don't
and
know. I mean, I kind of hope none of this is right, because like it's also kind of perpetuates these ideas about DID and about like I don't know how I feel about anything that's happening right now.
I know it's pretty. I mean, I guess we're supposed to be thrown into this and feeling confused at this point. I also don't entirely trust Nina. I'm not sure what's going on with her exactly
Mm,
yet
right,
either. There are
right.
aspects of her that seem a little sketchy to me. I like her. I mean, she's presented as a good
I
person,
like her a lot.
right?
But is she just playing the game along with Tenma because she sees what he's mentally going through, and that's why she doesn't want him to shoot because she knows that he's actually the killer? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there definitely are, like, we had her amnesia, which seems to be sort of dissipating a bit, at least. She seems to be
Hmm.
gathering at least some of her memories prior to the incident where she shot Johann,
Hmm.
maybe, or at least in a very vague way. But
Hmm.
yeah, she's an interesting element in this, and it seems like she's taken on this mission because she's afraid for the world, by that her twin, her brother, is going to do something very horrible and destructive, and that she believes it in her heart that what she needs to do is get rid of him. And she's made it her personal mission, I guess. And it's
Hmm.
interesting to see how that's Tenma as well. Tenma's taken
Yes.
on that role as well, and they both don't want the other to have to do it. I thought that was a nice touch as well.
I agree. I agree. And I think this is another instance where I think the manga, this is probably my favorite thing about this manga so far, is how much everything kind of ties together. So like at the end of the last manga, we had the last bind up, we had the guy who was teaching them about guns. And he was like,
Yeah.
whatever, if you're gonna pull that trigger, you better be prepared to take responsibility for the fallout, whatever that looks like, right? And so
Right.
now you have two people that feel a conviction that it's their responsibility to pull that trigger, and they don't want the other person responsible for the fallout. They want it to be them. And then you have Nina going to an ex-assassin saying, okay, I need someone to teach me how to do this because taking a human life isn't easy. And the assassin says, essentially, it's easy to kill a human. You just have to forget their humanity. You have to
Right.
stop tying them to the fact that they're human, which then ties to Tenma, who didn't want to let the terrorist die because he saw humanity in him, because there
Yeah.
were good reasons behind what he was doing, even if he was killing, there were innocents that were killed too. And so that ties back to the humanity quandrum that everything is like, every theme and
Yeah.
every little side quest that we do is all tangled together in a really masterful way.
Yeah, it's thematically really what I'm seeing is the thematic structure here is
Mhm.
really cool. Even
Mhm.
the little things like the assassin telling Nina, I saw him put 5 spoonful of
Mhm.
sugar in his coffee, and suddenly I connected with the guy, and
Mhm.
he was human, and I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
Right? That was a nice little moment there.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fantastic. And then there's stuff with Johan too, where like you see his behaviors. You see him like with the guy with the flower bed, where he wants this person, he wants these family members dead. So
Mm,
he sees a guy who's vulnerable and he twists it and he manipulates him to get him to do the dirty work. And then we get the understanding of how he was as a child, that he saw hatred in these 50 people and he knew how to manipulate them. He knew how to twist it to
yeah.
make them attack each other. So we know, we see his behaviors and then we see it in him as a child. We know that his skill is emotional manipulation. He
Right.
can get people to kill each other without him having to raise a finger because he's so good at that charismatic verbal side of it, which is like, I love it. It's very good.
And one question I have is he emotionally manipulating Tenma all this time?
Mm,
Or maybe his sister. And it's so interesting because both of them have this conflict. They both want to kill Johann,
mm,
but Tenma is a doctor who is sworn to save lives. So it's an inherent conflict for him. In Nina's case, it's her brother. And so
mhm.
obviously that's a pretty huge conflict. Is, yeah, I have to kill him. Oh, he's my brother. And she's probably contacted this assassin guy because she needs to know, how do I do this, especially because this guy that I want to kill is my brother.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I definitely, if it is if the reveal is that Tenma has DID, I definitely don't think that Tenma is Johan. Like I don't think they're the same person because
Uh-huh.
we have a constant reminder that Tenma is a different race than pretty much everybody else.
Yes.
So he's definitely not Johan. It would have to be some sort of supernatural or some sort of mental or something like that in order to make that work. And again, I'm not really lobbying for that twist. I'm just trying to talk it out because I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's also an important point that we didn't, I think, even mention in the last discussion, that Tenma is Japanese running around in Germany at a time when, and Germany is, look, it's actually a very wonderful, I live there, I love Germany, it's a wonderful country, and in many ways they're much more tolerant than we are overall, but there are racist elements there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And this
So
was during a time when there was a lot of racial tension. So,
yes, yeah, yeah. So that's an element in there as well, that his foreignness is I think, an important aspect of his character in this story.
mhm.
And it comes out in some interesting ways, and it makes it possible, I think, for Urasawa to give us some interesting moments of connection, like with the old doctor who tries to protect Tenma, and even the young police officer in that town who initially is like, oh, I'm going to get this guy, I'm going to get my promotion, he seems like a really shallow, awful, selfish human being who is even forgotten his own mother, and neglected his own mother. But even he has that moment where he kind of feels a little redeemed to me, where he makes the call, okay, I was mistaken, and it costs him personally too. I was mistaken. I just thought he was Asian. Must be the same guy. So he has a little moment there, which I thought was nice. At first, he was just this stereotype
Oh
of
yeah.
selfish, shallow guy, and then okay, that was nice.
Mhm.
I liked that.
Yeah. Do you like Heckle?
Otto,
Is that
Otto,
his first name?
Heckle the thief, right?
The sleazy, yeah, the thief.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's another kind of caricature. I would say he's a trope, but he's well done. I enjoyed his interactions most of the time with both Tenma and with Dieter.
Mhm.
And I like that underneath that me first, mentality, that there is why does he keep sticking around? Why does he keep helping out? And I love the moment with the rug where he's got this rug and he thinks it's his ticket to wealth and everything, and they have to
Oh,
throw
he's
it on
adorable.
the gasoline on fire, and the kid just grabs it from him, puts it, and he's like, oh man. So yeah,
I love that kind of archetype. I love the really selfish character that's not evil, just wrong. Like around every
yeah.
corner. Like,
We had
hey,
that a little bit with Maurer, the reporter, in the previous one, I thought.
yeah, yeah. I love that kind of character because they're not, I don't hate them, but I don't want to know them. I don't want that person in my life. They're
Right.
just fun to see as like, I don't know. They're just funny. I think he and Eva are really funny characters.
Yeah. He's sleazy, and in spite of the fact that he seems so selfish, there is something, there's humanity there. Whereas a character like the baby is just completely odious. Like there's
Mhm.
nothing there for me to like.
Mhm.
So yeah, he was, maybe that's, of course, that's what Urasawa was going for. He effectively made me dislike intensely this character. So yeah.
Did you think that Dieter would join our crew?
I didn't at first. I
Mhm.
didn't actually. I thought that Tenma would succeed in finding a home for him, but I love this little thing going on where Dieter keeps saying, no, I'm with you, buddy. And it's like the old doctor says, you stay with him because he's going to need you, right? He's going to need you to remind him of the right thing, right? To do in the moment. So I love that Dieter is a part of the crew now. And
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yep.
Good,
I'm
good
with you. And
choice.
it seems like that have me feeling like it's definitely not a Tenma is Johan and it's like this weird. It has me thinking that the detective is not correct because thematically it seems like this idea is being pushed that both Tenma and Nina are having to push their moral boundaries,
Right.
and that could cause them a spiral. And I really think that Dieter is going to be what grounds them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. And you know, and as soon as we met Dieter, we knew there was something deeply wrong. There was something off because of the way he was almost hostile toward Tenma, who was trying to heal him. And then you saw the horrible, and my mind just immediately went to, ooh, what happened to that kid?
Yeah.
And then we met the creepy Hartman guy who probably will come back because he
Because he wasn't killed. He
wasn't
wasn't
killed.
shot.
So I suspect that won't be the last. Honestly, I think he's like the most horrible character we've met so far, Hartman.
Yeah. Taking children, taking orphans in and
Yeah,
harming them and manipulating them and looking to corrupt them is
right.
a certain brand of evil.
Yeah, and successfully for a while posing as, oh, I'm such a saintly guy. Here I am taking care of this kid, right? And
Yeah.
even giving Tenma some information, and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
you know, but there was something off about him from the beginning. The smile was just a little bit too rigid there, right?
Yes, I agree. He shucks. Remind me of the others. Urasawa.
Urasawa. Yeah,
Urasawa
yeah,
does an excellent job of depicting a certain kind of personality in a character, like with
yeah,
Ava again, she's another one where like her smile is wrong, so
yeah,
you know that there's something weird happening there. And yeah, he was another character, Hartman. When we first met him, it's like, oh, there's something off about this guy, this doesn't feel right.
yeah.
And yeah, and you can really draw the lines faster than the story itself can get there of what's happening behind closed doors in that home.
Yeah, which again, one of the things we always go back to when talking about manga is how important the art is as a feature, a central feature of the storytelling, right? A lot of
Mhm.
that is conveyed through the visuals, and there was
Right,
something about that guy's smile that
right.
even from the beginning told me, in combination with the injury, and then it became super obvious when Tenma saw all the bruises and stuff all over this poor kid, which was
Yeah,
very difficult to read. Yeah,
yeah. Very, very difficult. And that scene with him in the chair after he had been harmed was
yeah.
had to take a break after that one. That one was rough.
But the
Uh,
good thing about that scene was Dieter was able to get out of the chair and
yeah,
walk down those stairs and disassociate himself from his
yeah,
abuser and see just that statement from Tenma, tomorrow is going to be a better day, right? And the
yeah.
soccer ball, which is almost a symbol now.
It is.
You
It
know, I thought
definitely is.
that was okay. Phew, you know, that was,
Yeah, and I think too, I think again, just kind of trying to look into the future, that's all gonna come back around to because Tenma was the light in Dieter's life and gave him hope that the world wasn't just darkness. So if Tenma has to continue to push his morality in this pursuit to take out Johann, I think that Dieter is going to return that favor. He's going to bring him back and keep him from, just like the doctor said, keep him from spiraling too far.
yeah, yeah. I hope so. I think that's going to be an important role for good old Dieter to play here. So, any other important moments or characters that we've missed here? I think we covered
Yeah,
most
we've
of
really
it.
jumped all around. Hey.
Yeah, we have. We got to just about everybody here. There's poor Ava looking decidedly more uh, bedraggled, I guess. Is
Yeah,
one.
she's going through it.
Yeah, yeah, and she and Lunga are now kind of sort of in cahoots to come after Tenma. But her obsession, she still keeps the whole interaction with the gardener was kind of sad for her, and it brought her to a new level,
Yeah.
because she had showed up at his house for the Christmas dinner and looked in the
With a
window
present. Yeah, it looked like she was
and
actually going to try.
had the present, was gonna actually, she had connected with this guy a little bit and saw he was a nice person and wanted for a change to go back to a nice person like Tenma. And he asked some very pointed questions to her too, like, okay, so why do you keep a picture, a framed picture of this guy you supposedly hate so much, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Ava goes. Like what is her arc? Because she keeps reappearing, so she's obviously not just the crazy ex-girlfriend. There's something that's gonna
Yeah.
happen with her. So I'm curious to see where that goes. It could really go either way. She could end up getting a redemption arc of sorts, or she could spiral and become another antagonistic force.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see if she sort of rises or becomes something other than the kind of stereotype that she is at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about the line, "When the Berlin Wall fell, a darkness was born, a monster was born"? He already told this to he had already told Nina this, but the it was what the baby had said.
Yeah.
What did you think? Was that in reference to when the Berlin Wall fell, something awakened inside of Johann?
So I think there's a political element to this. So as you know, that's Eastern Germany and Western
Yes.
Germany, and East was communist and the West continued as a capitalist nation. And when they were reunited, there was an initial period of jubilation and
Mm,
celebration and all of that, but there quickly some problems arose as a result of the disparities
right.
between the two countries, or what had been two countries now put together as one. So it wasn't smooth sailing exactly. There, you could
Right.
say there was on the part of maybe the West, or what formerly been the West, kind of maybe looking down on the East a
Right.
bit, and then from the East, a lot of resentment toward
Mhm.
these Westerners who came. You see references to it in
Oh,
here.
yeah.
These Westerners who swoop in, kind of like carpetbaggers in our own. When after the Civil War, you had Northerners going down to the South, taking advantage of this defeated place,
Yes.
economically speaking.
Yes.
A little bit of that going on here. So again, the uh, capitalist, extreme, let's say, toxic form of capitalism, exploitation of these people who are a bit down and out. So there was, I think, a period, and I don't know how it is so much now, but there's definitely a period of difficulty as a result of
Mhm.
that. And to characterize it as darkness, I think, is not far off.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And my head went there too, where he might have been talking more in a social sense, like many monsters were born, or this monstrous force,
Yeah.
or monstrous situation that was happening to a lot of people that were feeling displaced, that were feeling taken advantage of, that were feeling like there should have been unity, but the separation never ended, all that, right?
Right.
Um, I guess I just the only reason why I kind of hesitate to think that that's what it's about is because
Mm.
the monster was already there. The monster was created with this regime and with the separation and with what like trying to wipe out other races. And so
Yeah.
when the Berlin Wall came down, I don't know that a monster was born in that moment from a socio like I feel like that monster was already created. It's just that
Mhm.
it continued to have impact, which is why I'm kind of like, what did you mean a monster was born in that moment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I might
Well,
be getting too political. I don't want to make you uncomfortable.
no, 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 I'm not at all. I'm perfectly happy to talk about those things. But yeah, we've talked earlier about the racist element that's being portrayed in this, and that is something that was fed by this, let's say, resentment. So there were elements in what had been Eastern Germany, particularly, where they embraced the old kind of Nazi, we're the superior race philosophy. And
Right.
we're talking about very small, elements in the society, but they're very loud, of course, too,
Yes.
and willing to do some awful things. So
Mhm.
maybe I think it could be several things being referenced. It's not
Mhm.
like it's just the monster is born. It could have several applications, I think.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might not
Very
just
true.
be the political social element. It might be something more to do with Johann as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see.
What did you think about his final note on the water tower? I think it was where he was like, "Look at me, look at the monster inside of me." How do you
Yeah.
where do you think what do you think is going on?
Yeah, that was creepy, and those notes he keeps leaving. I'm trying to find this is a different one that he left on a wall. the water tower one, was where he was kind of, that was where I saw the
Right here.
plea for help. Yes, okay, it literally says help. The monster inside of me is going to explode. Yeah. Yeah, what is going on here? Is there a part of Johann that is good still, I guess?
Right.
And that part is leaving these messages, trying to help Tenma and Nina figure out how to get him, the monster part of him, you know?
Right. And thematically, I think that that's certainly possible because again, Tenma with the man who had killed many people, and Tenma wasn't sure if he should save his life. He ended up saving his life because he saw humanity in him.
Terrorist
I
guy.
reckon that has to come back around with Johann. The question is he going to see humanity in Johann or is he not? And that's going to be what's going to allow him to pull the trigger.
Yeah. 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 Very interesting stuff. I think there are a lot of different directions this could go in.
Yeah.
You and I both, I think, feel a bit confused still, which is a good thing, I think, at this stage of a story. So we're got 2 out of 9 of these bind-ups are done. So we shall see. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered everything sporadically.
Yes, and we didn't go in a methodical manner, but that matches, I think, with how I feel at the moment about this story. So
yeah, I definitely, as far as what direction I think this is going in, I feel all over the place, which I think is reflected very well in this video. I feel like it could be that, it could be that, it could be that. Like I don't know.
But there is enough in there that makes me think Urasawa has a plan, that all the 100%. Thematic connections that you mentioned earlier, he's bringing this somewhere, and I'm interested, very interested to see where.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Merphy. This was a lot of fun being confused together with you.
Very confused together.
We will find out. We are sleuths, you and I. So we are going to find out.
We're like the detective. We're just pitching stuff at the wall.
Seeing what sticks.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. The first discussion is up on, in case you missed it, is up on Merphy's channel, Merphy Napier Reviews. And we will continue to alternate these discussions. So the next one will be on Merphy's channel as well. And so we look forward to seeing you in those videos. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.